Thank you for watching this Ag Forecast video brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I'm Senior Meteorologist Andrew Pritchard, filling in for Eric Snodgrass, who is on a flight this evening, so safe travels to Eric. I'll go ahead and jump in here, give you an update a little shorter today, a little lighter on the analysis here, and a little just give an update on some of the model changes here and some of the updates on the storms that continue to track across the U.S. here. A very active pattern across North America. I'm also the one who gets to give you this update here. La Nina officially gone, the final advisory issued by the Climate Prediction Center, and so neutral conditions expected through the spring and early summer across the northern hemisphere. So we'll be talking about that as we head through the spring into the early summer. But La Nina, after the triple dip extended stay here, finally officially out of here. Also out of here, we continue to see improvement in the drought picture. The latest drought monitor update here. Drought free across a chunk of the Central Valley here for the first time in a long time across the western U.S. We continue to see improvements there. We do see some drought beginning to develop across the kind of the southern tier here, hugging the Gulf Coast. We'll look at this in terms of a 4-week change with the drought monitor. So green is good. That's where we've seen that improvement. We continue to see a lot of improvement here as the active storm track continues from west to east. But with that slightly northerly storm track, we've seen more in the way of storm systems coming in and then lifting across the Midwest. We're kind of missing out there across the Gulf Coast. So not all that alarming. We continue to see the chance for precipitation across these regions here over the next 10 to 20 days. So just worth noting, we've seen a couple upticks in drought categories there across the southern U.S. Here's the last 30 days of precipitation, kind of illustrating that storm track doing something like this, those storms lifting off to the north. We see that heavier precipitation from parts of Oklahoma and northern Texas, and then lifting into the Ohio and Tennessee valleys, and then all the heavy precipitation across the western U.S. as well. It continues to be active. We've got winter storm warnings, winter weather advisories in effect all the way from the Pacific Northwest through the northern plains, the Great Lakes, and then on into the northeastern U.S. We've also got flood watches in effect across a large swath of California, another atmospheric river event in progress and continuing over the next 10 to 14 days. Additionally, a low risk for some severe storms across the southern tier of states here, across parts of Texas into Arkansas and Louisiana, parts of Mississippi and Alabama overnight tonight. Tomorrow, that risk shifts into parts of northern Florida, southern Georgia, and then on Saturday, we see a renewed risk across parts of Oklahoma and Arkansas. This is a separate system then that will make its way from northwest to southeast here, with that risk shifting southeast across parts of Alabama, Georgia, and Florida as we get into Sunday and Monday. A look at the satellite picture. Again, you can see the pair of systems making their way through right now. All of the flow across the Pacific making its way into California and the interior west. Additionally, we've got a storm system making its way across the central United States. Wintry impacts north. That low risk for some severe storms across the southern portion of the storm system. We'll look at the radar there. You see the snow across parts of the Dakotas, Nebraska, Minnesota, northern Iowa. That'll shift into Wisconsin and northern parts of Illinois tonight. And then along the cold front, we've got showers and storms. That risk for severe storms greatest here across parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, into Louisiana, shifting into Tennessee, Mississippi, and Alabama as we head into the overnight. Just kind of your garden variety cold rain across parts of the central and eastern Corn Belt. And then, of course, north of that is where we have the snow. Shift your attention off toward the west. Again, another round of heavy precipitation across this region. We'll see additional storm systems ejecting across the Rockies through the next 2 weeks as well, bringing more in the way of precipitation to parts of the central U.S. Illustrated well here, we're looking at the 500 millibar height pattern across North America over the next 10 days from the European operational model. Again, you see persistent troughing here across the Pacific, with systems at times kind of breaking free from that, ejecting, and then traversing the central and eastern United States. We get some breaks in between those, so there is some variety there over the next 14 days east of the Rockies. That's going to mean some colder temperatures. That'll be a bit of a change here as we head through the last half of March. Some drier windows, but then also some periods of heavy precipitation. So we'll look at the precipitable water forecast. I really love looking at this. It illustrates a lot of what's going on. First, with the heavy moisture transport across California, but then you can see the, at times, moisture transport northward from the Gulf of Mexico as systems eject from the Rockies and then move into the central and eastern U.S. But you see some variety there. It's not a non-stop flow from the Gulf of Mexico. We see these fronts. You see one right here coming in Monday and Tuesday of next week that kind of clear the Gulf here and give us a bit of a change in the pattern east of the Rockies. The next 10 days of precipitation from the European model, again, you can see 1, 2, and now 3 storm systems making their way through over the next 10 days. Of course, we'll use a skeptical eye with the specifics on that last one there near day 9 and 10. But over the next couple of days, it's storm number 1 that's going to be impacting the central and eastern U.S., and then storm number 2 making its way in across the west over the next 48 hours. We'll bring this back, look at this Thursday night. And then here we go into Friday morning. Snow spreading eastward across the Great Lakes. Rain continues to move east into the mid-Atlantic and then extending along that cold front through the Gulf Coast states during the day Friday. This takes us into Friday evening, Friday night, and then this is Saturday morning. We wake up on Saturday morning. Storm number 1 has mostly cleared the Atlantic coast, and now storm 2 beginning to make its way in here across the northern plains. This would take us through Saturday. This is now Sunday, another round of snow spreading through the Dakotas into the upper Midwest, parts of Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, and northern Illinois seeing another round of snow on Saturday. Into Sunday, this storm starts to fall apart, much of the upper level support kind of diving south here. So we'll get another round of showers and storms continuing from northwest to southeast, from kind of the mid and lower Mississippi Valley into the southeastern U.S. Sunday into Monday, the snow really kind of falling apart across the Great Lakes here. Some scattered flurries until we get into the early and mid part of next week. We see this system potentially lifting up the East Coast, maybe bringing in some more substantial impacts. This would be kind of Monday night into Tuesday. The potential for some more significant snow across the Northeast. Not completely sold on this. This is something we'll have to kind of readdress on Monday and take a look at. But kind of an interesting progression here. We see that heavier snow initially across the Dakotas. We see it wane a bit across the Great Lakes, but then that potential for another heavier corridor across the Northeast as we get into the middle part of next week. We'll take the drawings off there, and then we see a bit of colder and quieter weather east of the Rockies during that Tuesday, Wednesday time frame, but then we bring another system in from the western U.S. as we get into, this would be Thursday and Friday of next week, the potential to bring another round of precipitation in. So we'll go ahead and we'll move ahead looking at the next 10 days. The European on the left, GFS on the right. Pretty good agreement here with the overall pattern. Again, significant precipitation. We're talking, 2, 3, in some cases 5 to 6 plus inches of precipitation up and down the west coast here. We see that on both the European and the GFS. And then as systems continue to run over the Rockies and then lift through the central and eastern United States, we see heavy rain across the southern tier of states here from kind of the mid-Mississippi down to the lower Mississippi, along and south of the Ohio River Valley. And then north of that, that's where we see the potential for, more than one swaths of significant snow here. So the potential for some snow to stack up across parts of the Canadian Prairie, that's good news. We've been really wanting to get that as well. But then additionally into the Dakotas, parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin, Iowa, northern Illinois, Michigan, parts of northern Indiana and Ohio, that eastern Corn Belt corridor. Again, the potential for multiple rounds of snow over the next 10 to 14 days. We'll see that here. Here's the forecast through Sunday. So this is the next kind of 96 hours through the 12th of March. You see again, the heaviest snow here, 10 plus inches falling from parts of North Dakota into Minnesota and Wisconsin, maybe far northwest northeast Iowa and northern Illinois, picking up maybe 6 or 7 inches of snow there. 4 to 6 as you make your way through Michigan into parts of southern New York and Pennsylvania. And then, of course, a lot of significant snow across the Sierras, the Cascades, and parts of the northern and central Rockies, with 3 systems making their way through over the next 10 to 14 days. We'll take a look at this for the European ensemble, the probability of picking up more than 3 inches of snow over the next 4 days. This takes us again through Sunday night, March 12th. I wanted to do this kind of to show the extent of the snow into the Canadian prairies. The southern tier of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba certainly have the chance to stack up a little bit of snow here. And even areas north of this, we're still talking about the potential for several inches of snow, which is not going to, make the winter. But after a dry stretch here, that is some good news to just get some snow on the ground. Of course, extensive snow cover already in place and going to be added onto across the interior west and northwestern United States. And then we see that potential for systems to continue across the Great Lakes as well. This does not include the potential snow early to mid next week across the northeastern U.S. An update here from the European weeklies. Again, this is March 15th, so we'll go ahead and write this up here. March 15th through April 15th. No big changes here, continuing to keep things pretty active and wet across the southern U.S. and the Midwest, but again, near average, if not a little wetter across essentially the entire Corn Belt. So the central and northern plains, the potential to remain active here as systems continue to run in from California and then lift across the central United States. We see the colder temperatures continuing to be advertised east of the Rockies. This is not a sudden shift toward bitterly cold temperatures, and it's also not uninterrupted cold. If I kind of animate this at a sliding window over the next 20 days or so, you can see we get multiple shots of colder air here. We get this initial shot that comes in over the weekend into early next week. We're going to see that colder air fade mid to late next week in areas that I'm talking about. I'll go ahead and pause this and kind of drag it out through time. So here's the first shot of colder air. This one comes in through the weekend into the early part of next week. This is what I'm talking about right here across the Mid-Atlantic, the Eastern Corn Belt, some areas that we really have not seen much in the way of cold air over the last 60 days. This breaks, though, as we get into the late part of next week, kind of around March 18th, 19th, and 20th. We see the potential for another system to make its way in. That would allow that southeast ridge to build some warmth back into this region. So potentially a break in the colder temperatures here as we get into kind of days 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, before another shot comes in here the last week of March. So again, just kind of trying to illustrate the kind of the variety to this that we're going to be seeing east of the Rockies. So we are shifting colder, but we're also changing the pattern as such. It won't be completely uninterrupted mild weather. It also isn't a flip toward a completely uninterrupted cold pattern either. We're just going to get some variety here. We'll see more cold days than mild, I think, over the next 14 across this region. But we'll also see some days here with temperatures, again, a little bit warmer than average. We'll look at the jet stream winds here over the next 2 weeks from the European model. This kind of illustrates the variety that we see here as well. Go ahead and bring it back here again. Multiple systems making their way through as we get this animation started. You see the extensive the Pacific jet extension across the Pacific Ocean pushing into the west coast. And then as we just animate this here, what I really wanted to show you was this period right here. This is centered on March 14th, so we continue to see that flow across the Pacific, but the change is that colder shot of air coming in here. Get that northwest flow east of the Rockies. So this brings in the first shot of colder air. This is when we also trend drier across this region. But as I just get my cursor here again, we'll kind of take this further. So that was the 14th of March. As we get into around March 17th, 18th, and 19th, this is when we bring another system in here. We're seeing the potential for this would be another active run, another storm system or two, bringing in the potential for widespread precipitation, maybe another round of severe weather at the end of next week, the potential for some warmer air out ahead of that, but then taking it a little bit further, then March 19th, 20th, here we go, back into another period likely featuring northwest flow on the backside of that system. That would bring in another shot of some colder air. And then where we go here the last week of March, we'll go ahead and let Eric go ahead and fill in on the specifics there. One last look at the precipitation forecast as systems continue to run from west to east across the country with that little break in there as we get into, again, March 13th and 14th. Let's just take this once more. This is March 10th, getting it started here tonight. We see storm number 1. Here is storm number 2. Go ahead and animate this. This is now Friday, Saturday, Sunday. This is when we see that renewed chance for some severe weather across the southeastern U.S. Sunday into Monday. I'll be watching that across parts of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, into North Florida, maybe even South Carolina. Maybe an elevated chance for severe weather on Sunday and Monday. This system gets out of here Tuesday. This is when we see that chance for some snow across the Northeast. Colder temperatures make their way in east of the Rockies. Storm number 3 now starting to make its way in across the western U.S. This is March 15th. 16th, this is Thursday of next week, March 17th, 18th. This is where we see that next system make its way in, opening the Gulf back up for another shot of some heavy precipitation from the mid and lower Mississippi Valley into the Ohio, the Tennessee Valley across the southern U.S. This would be March 18th and 19th, likely looking at another period of colder and drier weather on the backside of that one. Just a couple quick talking points and the latest forecast, the precipitation on the left, temperatures on the right across South America. Continuing to see wetter conditions across maybe southern Argentina, warmer across northern Argentina, still on the warm side drier across northern Argentina is what I meant to say. I think that I got ahead of myself there. Talking about the warmer temperatures across Argentina, a little closer to normal, closer to average across Brazil as far as temperatures go. We'll continue to see wetter conditions across portions of western and southern Brazil, a little drier in central and eastern portions of Brazil. I'll go ahead and let Eric give you a little bit more of an in-depth update, on South America, though. And I'll go ahead and end this video here. I appreciate you watching along. I appreciate you tolerating me here instead of Eric, giving you a bit of a brief update here. Hope you have a great weekend.